Hi, y'all. Welcome back to Jeff's Cars. And today, we're really not going to talk about Mercedes again. Surprising. But I did put a teaser out there in the last video that we're going to talk about some classic and antique cars that are practically worthless today. And so I've got a list right here. And then once we get done with that, then we're going to talk about 2024 and the cars that people were seeking out that are starting to become desirable for in the collector market. But without further ado, the 16 classic and antique cars that are practically worthless today. Number 16, the 1986 Fiero. Now, in relatively good condition, you can pick one up for probably under $6,000. Now, we know that some of the Fieros in that time frame had some engine issues and fire issues and so on and so forth, so we won't get into the details of that. Number 15 is the 1991 Chrysler TC, the Maserati. That's the one with the hardtop convertible, kind of falling in that era of trying to keep up with Mercedes and the SL kind of thing. You could probably pick one of those up for under $4,000. Number 14, 1980 Chevy Citation. Now, there's not much else to say about that, but if you can find one, you could probably pick one up for, $3,000 to $3,500. Number 13, the 1974 AMC Gremlin. Now, there was a time period where people were collecting those, and so now if you can find one, you can probably, you're going to find it for under $10,000, but you're probably not going to find, a barn find of those that's going to be really worth anything. Number 12 on the list, 1988 Yugo. No more comment. Number 11, 1975 Mustang 2. Now, I've seen a few of these out on Marketplace. People trying to sell them. Some of them have four-cylinder engines and so on and so forth. But if you can find one that's kind of respectable, you may give $5,000 to $7,000 for it, but typically not much more than that. Number 10 is the 1997 Mercury Sable. A few years back, probably about 12, 14 years ago, my wife actually owned one of these, and they rode nice. They were a decent riding car, decent driving car, but now they're pretty much worthless, $1,500 or less. Number 9, 1985 Cadillac Cimarron. My wife's actually owned one of those in her very younger years, and she commented that it was nice, it was easy to drive, and so on and so forth. Personally, I wouldn't mind owning one just for the nostalgia, even though it's just a fluffed up Cavalier. Number 8, 1990s Plymouth Breeze. Probably pick one of those up for, $500 to $1,000. Number 7, 1988 Sterling 825. You can probably find some of those, if you can find them, for $2,500 or less. Number 6, 1979 Olds Cutlass Supreme, the diesel. The one with the 5.7 diesel. If you can find one, if it even runs, you might give $3,000 for it. But, there's probably no parts for the diesel engine. It's just not a desirable car. Number 5 on the list, 1983 Renault Fuego. Okay, $1,500. Number 4 on the list, 1977 Dodge Aspen. And I'm going to guess that the Plymouth Volare is going to be included in that. During that time period, those cars were pretty solid. It had a slant 6 engine in it, very reliable, but the car was just rusted away, you probably pick one of those up for $1,500 or less. Number 3 on the list is the Datsun 810, and they depicted the sedan. I actually had that car in my early years when I first got married in my early 20s. I had that car in the station wagon version. Had the 280Z motor in it, the large fuel injected 6-cylinder, very peppy, very comfortable to drive, very easy to drive, but they are hard to find because they, again, had rust issues. The engines and transmissions were fine, but the cars just rusted to the ground. Number 2 on the list, the 1990 Geo Metro, no more comment. And then number 1 is the 1984 VW Quantum. You could probably pick one of those up for $1,000, $1,500. Now let's go on to the positive side of things. 10 classic cars that were invested in 2024. The Jaguar XJS, 1975 to 1996. The Porsche 944, 82 to 991. BMW 2002 from 68 to 76. And that's no surprise because that is a very desirable car. If you can find one, you're going to pay some money for that car. Corvette C3 68 to 82. Again, that's no surprise to me because, you know, that era, collectors, you know, the collector starting out can't really afford the previous models, but you could pick some of these, you know, some of these cars up for $10,000 to $20,000, and hopefully they'll continue to gain in value. I see the C5s coming on as well, but the C3 is the ones that are being sought after. The next one, no surprise to me, I actually have one, is the Mercedes SL, the R107, 71 to 89. Now, of the R107s, the most sought after right now is the 560 SL. However, I believe the 450, the earlier 450 SLs, and even the 350 SLs with the 4.5, which that's what they came with in the United States, are probably going to be equally as sought after. But right now, the 560 SL is very, very desirable. Next on the list, Alfa Romeo Spider, the Duetto, from 66 to 93. Next, Jaguar XK8, 96 to 2006. And they said the Datsun 280ZX, 78 to 83, but I don't believe it was badged ZX. I think it was just badged Z, if I remember right. I think the X came later when it got to, and it may have been in the 82, 83, but I believe the X was added when it was the 300ZX. Next on the list was the Ford Capri, 69 to 86. And last, which kind of surprises me, is the Triumph TR6, 68 to 76. Now, the one that I would think would come along would be the TR7, which was just after that. That was the sloping one. But I haven't seen a lot of activity on that one. So the TR6, I think, is a much, much more fun car to drive. Now, to end this video, I've compiled a list, and I've owned, I think I'm up to 150 cars in my lifetime that I've actually titled, owned, and had for a period of time. I know it's more than 140, but it's probably 150 in it. Somewhere in my desk, I've got a list of all the cars that I've owned. I just written them down. But I got 5 cars from my earlier years, you know, from the 70s and 80s that I wish I still had or owned today. And number 1 on my list was my second car ever, a 1973 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme with the Rocket 350 and the Quadrajet carburetor. Mine was burgundy with the half white vinyl Landau top. Now mine had a bench seat and the automatic shifter on the column. I did find one of these cars with the full vinyl top with the Hurst floor shifter and bucket seats with the Rocket 455 in Sioux Falls about a week ago. And let me tell you, they're asking $25,000 or somewhere in that range. And boy, if I had the money, I would certainly love to go. I'd love to have that car because that brings back some good memories of my childhood. The next car in the same platform I owned, and this was probably, I think this was my fourth or fifth car, and I was still in high school. It was a 1973 Pontiac Le Mans. And in this one, I did have the bucket seats with the floor shifter and a rare sliding sunroof. Now, I didn't own this one very long because I was driving home one late fall evening from my part-time job, in the mall, and I had to kick the sunroof open while I was driving 55 miles an hour, and it picked up and blew off the car. So I had to end up getting rid of the car because, well, the sunroof was damaged and it basically, I got nothing out of it. So I lost, in high school, I was losing money on cars. Then after I graduated high school, I had purchased a 1977 Ford Thunderbird Town Landau. This was a beautiful car. It was probably 4 or 5 years old when I bought it. Well, yeah, I graduated in '79. And then I had this car a year after high school, when I lived in Wichita, moved to Denver, then moved to Los Angeles, and then moved to Utah, and then moved back to Wichita. And I put a lot of miles on that car. In fact, I ended up going through a transmission, had to get a new transmission put in it when I came back through Colorado on my way home. Or got it fixed or whatever it was. That was in 1980. But anyway, mine was a taupe color with the brown, split top with the stainless steel over the top, the Landau top. Had the crushed velvet interior. Beautiful, beautiful car. I found one very, very close to it in Lincoln, Nebraska about 2 years ago. Tried to convince my wife I need to go buy that car. She didn't agree. Somebody just south of here in Blair, I believe, bought it because I saw it parked on the street, and I'm going, oh my goodness, I wish I had that car. But that was probably one of the best cars that I owned in my life, with the exception of the last one on my list. But number 4, during the time period that I owned that Thunderbird, when I lived in Denver, I had a 1965 Chevy C10 pickup. Now, in that era, I think they had a 6-cylinder and a V8, and I think the V8 was a 283, but mine had the 6-cylinder with the 4-speed manual transmission, which I think most of them were manual transmissions back then. I actually love that truck. It was pretty much, the paint was gone, but it was pretty much rust-free for, here I'm in 1981, I own a 65 C10 pickup, driving around Denver, as just kind of a second fun vehicle, and even during that same period, I had a Vega too. Don't know why. Just for the nostalgia of it, I guess. But I love that pickup, and I wish I'd owned one today, because obviously today, you're seeing a lot of resto mods putting LS motors in them and lifting them and putting 4-wheel drive. Mine was just a 2-wheel drive pickup, really doing it upright. So I wish I owned that truck. And last on the list, I owned a 1985 Cadillac Fleetwood Brougham, and it was silver with silver-colored leather interior. Had the tucked leather. That car was just absolutely beautiful, and I owned that I think I owned that thing for 2, maybe 3 years. It had gotten hailed on twice. Never broke any glass, but it was probably the most comfortable car I'd ever driven. It was our family car, but you know, everything worked on that car. I drove it. I think I bought it when it had 50,000 miles on it, 55,000 miles on it, and I drove it till it had 185,000 miles. It was just absolutely a beautiful, beautiful car. I've seen those now bringing a lot of money, you know, in great condition. Um, would I wish I could get that one back? Yeah, but then I'd have to fix all the hail. But you know, one like that, you know, some of those are bringing, you know, $10,000 to $15,000 in, you know, in great condition. So there's my list of the 5 cars from my early years that I wish I had. And then of course the 16 antique and classic cars that are virtually worthless. And then of course the ones that were invested in, you know, in 2024. So if you like some of this content, continue to share this with your friends. Hit subscribe if you haven't. I'm going to have a lot more statistical stuff as well, because it's a little cold to be working on my cars out in the garage. But, you know, when I get that opportunity, I will. You know, share this with your friends. And if you have some suggestions for content for me, put it in the comments or shoot me an email. I will be happy to come up with that. Appreciate you watching. Have a great holiday season. And thanks again for supporting my channel. Have a great day.